and how each facet really reflects the other. Like you can't really create analog work without referencing technology, if only print is always referencing the Gutenberg press. And of course, you can't create anything digital ex nihilo. It's always an expression of the analog. So we have this conversation that's constantly ongoing throughout. I would say this is also true of the medium we're using, because we're using Tezos as a medium in this instance. We're registering the different steps of the dispatches, for instance, on the ledger, level L1. And then we are creating a catalog of everyone's artworks, and that will be minted on object, so on a L2. And that as well is the same sort of conversation, meaning that there is a network, a physical network. I have an Excel spreadsheet with addresses, and that feels very good, by the way, because I feel that we're in a very fragile moment, and there's something really precious about having a physical network. And at the same time, because this is a blockchain project, ultimately, it is reflected in the blockchain. And I think I've been saying, and I've heard others say for a long time now, that the true gift of Web3 is for us to find the other, to find our friends, our tribe. And so there's something also that has been facilitated through blockchain as social tissue in a way, especially when it's used artistically, where all of a sudden we're able to come together in a marketplace and say, I see you and I recognize your art and you're my friend now. And so there's also that conversation. I'm just going to take a breath and see if this is hitting home or whether I'm just rambling.
It really is wonderful and fascinating. And if anybody isn't already following the threads, Aether is doing some very thoughtful threads throughout the project's development. And my first question that just came to me naturally is I'm intrigued by your use of the word analog, because usually we just jump straight to the word physical. And I noticed you used that word as well. So it seems intentional if you would like to kind of express the differentiation there.
Sure, thank you. So physical obviously just speaks for itself. I think we all have, it all evokes for us the physicality of working on a piece. But in using the word analog, I'm also referencing tools. And it's been really interesting how folks in this project have incorporated elements that I would call specifically analog. For example, someone included a floppy disk in her work. Another artist, and I'm not going to name all of the artists because that would take too long, and there is a catalog that's being built for that specific purpose. And also, they are all referenced in my different threads and updates, and there will also be an individual focus on each artist coming up. So I'm not at all brushing aside. It's just that it would be too lengthy to sort of drill down and make sure that everyone gets the same praise they deserve. And another analog, well, not so much tool, but expression, is the cassette tape. There have been a couple of cassette tapes. And so there's this whole reflection on what, like, how did we capture our work before this moment? There's also someone who created an e-paper device. So we have these different, almost archaic expressions, and that in and of itself is a reflection on how do we capture our work? How do we capture our voices? Because we have this illusion, and I think everyone is quite clear on the fiction, I call it, of immutability. You know, we've all been waxing lyrical about the eternal blockchain, but we also know that if the grid is taken down, that's not going to really do us any good. And we also know that we can only use and see and take advantage of and appreciate the fruit of a technology if we have the tools to read it, to use it. I wrote a Substack article about the latency ledger, and I was saying that I have this VHS tape that I can't read because I don't have the reader. Now I could buy one, but maybe my children's children won't be able to find that device to read the VHS tape. And on the other hand, we have Egyptian papyri, for instance, and those are both fragile, but they've lasted millennia. We have Sumerian clay tablets. So I think analog for me is the clay tablet versus the scribe who had a little tool and who was doing the markings on the damp clay. And so I wanted to include all of that because for me, this project is also on a reflection on tools, on technology in the deepest sense. Does that answer
Sounds
your
very
question?
interesting.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Did that answer your
Fantastic
question,
answer.
Jesse?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the layers beyond the word physical that are actually related to the project. And I think it's really interesting that you're doing things like that people are sending cassette tapes and I think initially the first thought would be like postcards and paintings and drawings. So I think that's really good to differentiate and point out.
Yeah, thank you. And if I sort of pursue the metaphor, I would say that what I'm expressing here, and it's interesting because one of the other things I thought about upstream is that however I envision this, and of course, there's a method to the madness. Ultimately, I was very confident, and this is already expressing itself, that what we are weaving together would be more than the sum of its parts. There's naturally, when you bring humans together, especially creative folks, especially artists, there's this gestalt that happens. And so the residue, the outcome is more than the sum of its parts. And in a way, what I have devised here in calling myself for this specific exercise, the postmaster, I'm a bit like a conductor. And I've created, out of the ether, if you'll allow me the pun, a sort of algorithm, a human algorithm, and this is a score. And then I'm inviting people to play this music. And of course, the music becomes their own. They riff on it and they express it in very unique, idiosyncratic ways. And together, and this is no accident, we discover all of these resonances and we discover our own humanity and how we are, more similar than different, even though I'm working with people on 5 continents. And one of them had never shipped something overseas. Another person had never been to the post office. And then others have shipped art internationally for eons, So you have all of these differences. And these will also be captured in the catalog, but you have ultimately this choral, this voice. And it's interesting because someone also created a choir in her work, an expression of a choir. And I thought that was just hitting the nail on its head. But I know also that it was, I'm confident that it was entirely subconscious. And it doesn't really matter because I think that's when art or where art lives, it is in that collective unconscious. And so this has just been a delight for me. I feel just so honored to have been, around long enough to have identified the artists that I thought might want to contribute to this project. And not only did they want to contribute, but they've all outdone themselves. And then I've had countless DMs of people saying, "Hey, why didn't you call me? And I'd love to take part. And are you doing, chapter 2? And please keep me in mind, et cetera, et cetera." And that also, I mean, it's a little bit heartbreaking, but it's also beautiful because it speaks to the longing we all have for connection. That is, it's wonderful when someone acquires your art on blockchain, but it's a very different thing when you receive a parcel or a letter. It doesn't really matter how big it is, from halfway around the world. And the way I designed it is that no one knows who's sending to them. And then all of a sudden, you get this little treasure that was made for you halfway around the world and created and thought up with love and packaged delicately. And it's just, it's pure magic. So this is probably my most interesting, not the biggest, but my most interesting project so far. So I'm very, very, I keep on saying this, but I'm grinning as I say this. You can probably hear it. I'm just delighted. And yeah, that's sort of the essence of it.
Sounds so wonderful, to be honest. And maybe you can break down a little bit like the actual process, like yeah, how does it work? Like maybe you can break down everything a little bit more for the audience. So like who's like
Sure.
people have they any restrictions? I imagine not. And then they send out the mail, and what happens after? So we yeah, we go through it a little bit.
Okay. So, first of all, there were a series, I think maybe only, I thought it would be one, but it ended up being three briefs, just sort of outlining all of the different steps. It's straightforward, but I feel like this kind of friction has become very like there's a lot of resistance to it, not specifically with this group, but just in general, especially people who've been minting art. And a lot of the people, not all, but in fairness, a lot of the people who are also shipping physical art often have someone do that for them. So this idea of all of a sudden you're shipping to a place you've never shipped to before, and you're not exactly sure how that works. There is a stipend to contribute to postage, but this was perhaps the first area where some artists really hit a wall, because not having done it before, some people started creating rather generous packages, and when they went to the post office, it was hundreds and hundreds of dollars, and that was not an option. So some folks went home and unwrapped their package, felt the sadness, and we revisited. But we're also documenting all of that. So every step of the way, this gets registered on blockchain, and so I have this whole record of what package is going where at what time, etc. And that's sort of the conductor, if you will. But then at the level of each member of the orchestra, there was a time to put together one's work. They received, and of course I gathered all of everyone's details. They received an address, which was their target address, where they were going to send their package, without ever disclosing this to anyone, just for the surprise effect. Ultimately, it wouldn't really matter. And then I decided early on that we weren't going to do an actual relay, meaning it doesn't go from A to B and B sends back to A or to C, because just given the time and also funds, it wouldn't have been possible. So people just receive one, and they document their work before sending. So I have behind the scenes photographs, details, and then the finished work. And this is an interesting question, because I've been thinking about whether I really want to capture the finished work in the catalog, or whether I like the details and the mystery of just highlights and evoking the process, rather than another catalog with artist A image, artist B image. I really want to do this more conceptually. And so each of these artists have provided all of these images, and then evidence of tracking. So I know when they went to the post office, at what time, and used all of that data. And then they wait. And so for me, this first period is what I call the inhale. And this, I think, is how I'm going to structure the catalog. So we have this big inhale, this excitement, and then we hold at the top of the inhale. And we wait. We've shipped our package. We've got our stipend. We're neck deep in this, super excited. And we go to the post box every day and hope and pray. And that's another unknown. Will any packages get lost? And then, of course, we open the package, and that's the exhale. That's the moment of, I made it, and I got mine, and I know mine was received. And so this is this, human exchange at its core. And then we document that. That's, what we would call in modern parlance the unboxing. And so these are starting to come in, beautiful photographs. And the beauty of this, of course, is that, dealing with artists, creators, designers. The documentation I'm receiving is really beautiful as well. Um, it's not an Amazon unboxing, so it's really lovely to play with all of these images. And the good problem I have is, how am I going to do this justice? And I'm not going to be able to use every single image, and so there's a really serious curational endeavor to to carry out to make sure that everyone is represented and that the story, the collective story, is told, from the inhale, the hold, and the exhale. And then I just want to add, and then I'll stop rambling, I promise. I just want to add that I've chosen artists very much based on, my connection with them, how I thought they would be a good fit, and where they were on the globe. I was conscious that I had many in Europe. I live in California, but I'm half French, half British. And I tried to spread that out. And I did approach artists in other places and I only have one from the global south. And I really wanted someone from Iran. I wrote about that in my weekly update yesterday on X, and that wasn't possible. And not only is that, sad for me, sad for the project, but it also speaks to the moment we're in, the fragility of communications. And of course, post is going to be difficult, but the internet is also difficult, as we know. And so I really want to leave everyone with this idea that and I know this word is a bit trite, but we have the privilege of being able to communicate. Right now, we're all on this call in this space. And I think it's important to communicate now, to exchange letters now. And if it's not a letter, maybe it's a DM. And if it's not a DM, maybe it's a shout out. I love those X posts that say, it doesn't cost anything to support an artist. Write a shout out, retweet, recommend, share, etc. I don't have the sequence, but there are a few of those floating around, and I couldn't agree more. And I think it's so important because we're in this echo chamber, and as artists, for us, promotion is often anathema, and it's so helpful. Like, I never feel better than when I can speak about other artists. And if we can just lean into that while we can, I think our space will be all the better for it.
I wholeheartedly agree, and already getting very excited to talk with you some more. I know that you will be not this Friday, but next Friday's guest for Artsy Friday. So we'll be able to really dive even deeper, and I'm super excited about that because I have so many things I relate to you on from my artist experience on Tezos, and just want to second something you said earlier, which is that the joy of getting physical art from a Tezos friend or artist that you admire or both is unbeatable. It is something that you feel and then just want to continue feeling.
Yes, absolutely. It's magical. Nothing short of magic.
Wonderful, I love it. And maybe the last question that I also have is the part that you can collect an object. Will it be the catalog, or will you do also some kind of surprise puzzles? Because the whole process sounds so surprising, so heartwarming. So I don't know. It's so many things that you can. So many details that you can look out for that are wonderful about it. So I wanted to know what is the plan on object?
Well, that's a really great question. I want to hold that lightly in this moment because I don't want to rule anything out. What I do know is that the art belongs to the recipient. And so if artist A received from artist D or whatever sequence, that the artist A cannot mint the work of artist D, and nor will I. So the catalog is sort of the heart of the documentation of this work. It's, like I say, the residue. And on that, I do want to name one person, my dear friend Pixelare, the artist known as Pixelare, who many of us know as Dario, who's an Italian artist in his own right, but also an amazing designer with whom I've worked in the past. Dario is, as I speak, working on the catalog. So hopefully, we will be able to tell a really strong story in that document. I don't want to rule out other, maybe other pieces. Maybe there can be a puzzle of sorts or a collage of sorts or something interesting that doesn't find its way in the catalog, or that is so important that, we want a standalone piece. So I won't rule that out, but I really want to be clear that for me, the art is already happening. The art is underway. And the catalog is a photograph. It's a way of capturing this story. But the art, and that's the beauty of it for me, and this is a little Dada, a little punk rock, very Fluxus. The art is not for sale. It's happening in the post and it's happening on the Tezos blockchain, but we are not flogging JPEGs here. This is really something different. And that's a very dear, dear story to my heart. And of course, we're not doing this in a vacuum. So there will be ways of sharing in the catalog, of course, and through writing and storytelling of various sorts. And the more, and as like just thinking out loud, I'm already thinking of different avenues that we might explore. So this is a very useful question. But this is also a little bit different. We're going against the grain. I hope that
I
answers
love.
your question.
Yes, I love that, and I love that you take off the pressure of like this is not about selling. It's not like what this space sometimes is too much of, right? Too